102.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, our conversation continues for the next 23 minutes with Senator Okiya Omtatah, the Adani deal, the expansion of JKIA. So, Senator, before Adani came with its proposal, what had the Kenya Airports Authority done?
I think there have been a lot of things that have been going on about the airport, including the attempt that Parliament started under the Uhuru administration to have Kenya Airways take over the airport. That was started. So it is something that has been there on the cards, and that's why I'm telling you it is something that cannot be. It's not privately initiated. There's nothing being initiated. It's a public project that is looking for funding. What they are looking for is for funding. If you are looking for funding, you open a tender and do it competitively, and people come. So we're not against PIPs and what have you, but this is not a PIP.
Well, it is a PIP.
No, it's in the name it's being called a PIP. But if you look at the conditions inside, it's not really a PIP. Yeah,
it's a PIP because it's not responding to any request for quotation of a proposal.
It's not a PIP. It's not initiating anything. He has money. Other people have got money to do a project that is open. Let them advertise.
Yes.
Let us get the best deal.
So those are the two things that I think that threw people into a lot of confusion. Number one is that why was it this one individual and his business that was then given the priority? And if we're looking at signs that perhaps the contract has actually been signed, another issue is the management for such a long period of time. If you're coming in to upgrade the system, what warrants you to then now stay for 30 years when it comes to management? Because obviously with management, a good amount of the money that is then made by the airport would go into the Adani Group, bottom line, commercial.
Yeah. I don't know, this document the minister brought is called, now you see this one is headed, the minister's document is headed confidential.
What document is it?
It's called Heads of Terms.
Heads of Terms.
Of Concession Agreement. Basically, which is an agreement contract, so they are trying to conceal it. But it's just headed confidential. It's not private and confidential. It's simply confidential.
Okay.
So which means non-disclosure.
Okay.
But if it is private and confidential, it means it's assigned to an individual. It cannot be to a public body. Yeah, and that's why I was raising that red flag.
Okay.
And when you look at it, like if you look at, there are so many things that are terrible here. If you look at 2.6, the concessionaire may submit its application for grant of lease of land for city-side development at the airport, and the same will be processed by the guarantor in accordance with the applicable laws. Now, when you go through this document, this particular thing is saying that these Adani fellows want to develop a city around the airport. The airport.
Yes.
So don't develop that infrastructure. But if you look at these terms and whatever, it is very vague. There's no full disclosure of how the land is going to be done. That we have got things that we have got contracts that have been running in between KA and the third parties. There's nothing said about those contracts, how they're going to be handled and dealt with. And so this whole thing is something somebody thought would come up with and make some quick loot. And they get away with it. Unfortunately, it came out. In June, I got a message from a young man who is based in France, raising the red flag. This message went around. That's the guy who saved the situation, because everything was being done underhand. The question of transparency, accountability was not there. Public participation was not there. So when all those requirements are breached, in whose interest are they doing this thing?
And if you ask that question, then, Senator, then what would you say in terms of what could be done at this point? Because they're saying, okay, look, if we're saying that there's no need to do it in the manner in which it was done, then what is another option? Number two, open it up, because yes, the conversation has been had by the Kenya government for some time in terms of an upgrade for the airport. So what you say, open it so that you have more people bidding. What would be the way to undo what seems like a tightly, tied agreement at this point, whereby only one benefactor then is present, what would be the way to undo what this potential damage could do?
I think the best thing to do is, first of all, to abandon this whole thing, to stop it where it is. It's being done outside the law. The government cannot be exposed to any penalties because this is being done outside the law. And if you remember the duty-free shops of Ali Ibrahim and the way he lost his case when he sued the Kenyan state, because in part of his affidavit, he had said that he had bribed Moi, the former President Moi, to be allowed to operate the shops. And so the tribunal in, I think, Washington said, now, if you did that, then you went against Kenyan law, and therefore you cannot put anything on the sovereigns. In the same case here, we've got very clear laws. One of them is that when you come up with a policy position, there has to be public participation. It was not done. There has to be transparency and accountability. This thing is being hidden. Until somebody who happens to work in a firm where this contract was seen blew the whistle.
And if that didn't happen,
we'd have woken
up one day and found that it would have actually been called another kind of airport, and other things had already started to happen.
Yes.
Is it not?
It's like
the
that.
name would have been changed.
Senator,
we would have been moved on to something else.
Please give me the document that had steps, not the heads of terms one. The one that the CS gave you with the steps that were to be taken before a formal signing of a contract. Because I just want to go through the steps. When a proposal is brought and what was then supposed to happen, there are several steps, and you're saying there are 20 steps. One, the contracting authority, now we're going to call it here KAA. KAA receives the privately initiated investment proposal. The private party pays a non-refundable review fee of 50,000 USD. KAA conducts initial review of the proposal against key parameters under the PPA Act, including affordability and value for money. The PPP Directorate sets up evaluation committee, including relevant government agencies. The technical committee of the PPP assesses the evaluation report. The committee approves the project to proceed to the detailed feasibility report stage. This is feasibility report stage of the development phase. The private party conducts detailed feasibility studies and sends their findings or report to the contracting authority. The contracting authority, that's KAA here, reviews the feasibility reports and sends them to the PPP committee. The committee reviews the feasibility reports to determine the suitability. The contracting authority proceeds to negotiate with the private party on the proposed structure and content of the project agreement. Negotiations happen within 6 months. During the period, KAA, with support of the PPP Directorate, present a project and financial risk assessment report for approval. Once you have received the approval of the committee and the key aspects of the agreement are agreed on, the parties then proceed to conduct detailed due diligence and stakeholder engagement based on the actual structure. Due diligence will include legal, financial, technical. KAA presents a project agreement to the PPP committee for approval. The agreement is approved by the board of the contracting authority and the PPP committee, and is sent to the AG for clearance. The concession agreement is forwarded to the cabinet by the CS in charge. The concession agreement is signed. A copy is sent to the AG for his record. The private party and the contracting authority engage with banks to get the project to where all the requirements of the bank provide for debt, and so on, until the private party hands over the project in good state back to the contracting authority after this. Now, I want to look at all that where in the initial stages, step 1 up to step 10, it's all about feasibility, and this is KAA conducting feasibility and seeing, and with a PPP committee looking whether this thing makes sense. Step 11 is where the Kenya Airports Authority then proceeds to negotiate with the private party on the proposed structure and content of the project agreement. And I guess this is where now the heads of terms comes in. What is the heads of terms? Heads of terms is that document right before a contract where you are all in agreement. This is how our contract shall look like. This shall be our obligation, and this shall be your obligation. We are in agreement that then gets into a contract. So we're already at the heads of terms stage. Have all these other things been done?
No, they have not. In fact, number one, one of the things that were supposed to be done is under Section 40, Clause 3J of the PPP Act, is that the the privately initiated proposal under Section 1 shall contain the following information. It gives all that. One of the things it should contain a justification why the project is not suitable for open competitive procurement.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere in that document.
Justification.
Yes. That this document cannot be procured on the open market. Mm-hmm. There's no justification for that. So they skipped, and if you look at all that you have read, those steps, when you look at them, they have skipped from Section 40, Clause 1, Clause 2, Clause 3, and they are now somewhere around where they begin with the private party paid money into the place. That can only be done when the project has been approved. Has been approved and is proceeding. So they have left out the other part, like if you look at Section 4 of Clause 4 of the Section 40 of the Act, they say the contracting authority shall submit a private initiated proposal to the Directorate for assessment and approval. Then the Cabinet Secretary may, by notice in the Gazette, prescribe when submissions may be made under this section. You see?
All in a public manner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you are required to have been told before even they came to the heads. They should have subjected this thing to public participation. They never did that. So they are beginning with Clause 6, where you are talking about money being paid by the private organ, and then they are trying to proceed with that. Then on the due diligence, they have also did not even submit the criteria for due diligence, which is required to be made public. So this whole process of what they are doing is an attempt to steal a march on Kenyans, end up with a fait accompli. Then they'll tell you already have a contract, and to terminate this contract,
terminate this thing, it will cost us.
So let us just kama ile damu ya ulimi umejiuma ulimi.
Meza tu.
Umeza tu.
Ulimi ni yako, damu ni yako.
So that's what they're trying to get us. And the argument they have that there's no money and therefore we need this thing and whatever takes us back to the story of Esau and Jacob. We're not going to sell our birthright for a bowl of soup, which is coming out. The other thing I've talked about in there 20 steps. You have read one where they're saying that they now begin looking for funding. In a PPP, you already must have funding.
Yeah. That's why they brought you as a private entity in. Because
that's why you are coming and saying, I've got money, I want to do this. Can you allow me to do it? So when you're talking about loans and whatever and other things, then again you lose it big. And so this thing is not a PIP. It's not a PIP. It's just an attempt to use to paint a hyena like a lamp and get in, and then the damage will be done.
The heads of terms, because that's a crucial stage.
Yeah.
What do the CS say about the heads of terms? Have they agreed on the heads of terms? Because the heads of terms actually now stipulate what the obligations when we get into an agreement. This is just a step before a formal contract is signed.
Yeah.
Have they signed the heads of terms?
Well, he said they have not signed, that they are still in process. But as you can see, the Adani signature is here.
Adani has already signed this part.
Yes, the signature is here. These are have signed on that document.
They've initialed
signed on each page.
They've initialed all pages.
They've initialed. So they're saying that there's no contract. But what it tells us that there's a contract is the Act itself. Because the Act has a requirement, and I asked the minister that question and he didn't answer. They say, on execution of a project agreement, the project contracting authority and the successful bidder shall establish a project company in accordance with the Companies Act 2015. Now, this having been done, they cannot try to fool us by saying that they have not signed.
Yeah, because why would you go ahead and open up a company, the subsidiary that they speak about?
Yes.
Why would you go and establish a subsidiary whose role then is essentially to conduct the business if you've not been given the business?
And this is a very, very clear, Section 68 of the Act, it's very clear that the company is formed after there has been a deal, an agreement sort of. So for me, there's a lot of concealment. And you know, as I do that, concealment has just one weapon that makes it succeed. I mean, fraud. Only thrives on where there's concealment. Where there's transparency, you cannot have fraud. So this is a massive attempt to conceal this project, and it's totally against the law, and I think maybe ultimately the answer might lie with the judiciary. Yeah.
The parliamentary probe, the probe in the Senate,
Yeah.
it's being spearheaded by the Departmental Committee on Transport.
Yes.
So apart from the CS for roads,
Yes.
who else is this Transport Committee speaking to?
They wanted to call the director of the PPA section next, but I think we're going to demand that a few more people come. You have got the minister for finance.
Yeah.
Both the current and the previous holder will need to be summoned. You have got the board
Of
KAA. We need to be summoned. And for them, they are saving graces that they seem to have rejected this thing. Because when this document the minister brought, the very last document was the minutes by the board. And they are saying that let me look for the place. There's a place they are saying that it was observed that the project has attracted interest from different quarters in government, making it difficult to advance a common position as the government. So you see there are interests fighting within government over this project. The board sought clarification as to whether KAA management had an internal committee with KAA's positions on all aspects of the project, or it was reported that the negotiations were being undertaken by KAA represented by general managers responsible for procurement, finance, human resource, and whatever. So the committee seems to have raised questions. And if you look at their minutes, they are not approving of this project. It's like it's being done away from the board, which is wrong. It's being run by interest in the government, the ministry, which is wrong. So we are also going to demand that the board appears before the committee to explain to us. We would also want to have somebody like the former minister who was in charge
when this started.
Mr. Murkomen, to appear before the committee, and we grill him. So there are very many things that we need to do to get out the information that is required to understand this thing.
Are you a member of the committee?
No, I'm not a member of the committee.
Okay.
I just got interested. This is Senator Sifuna, Senator Olekina, Senator Chererke, myself, and the mover of the motion, Senator Nyonka, are not members of the committee.
Okay.
But because the issues of national importance, we decided to intervene and help the committee push this document to the logical conclusion. We want to avoid a situation like what happened when Honorable Linturi on the fertilizer saga was cleared, and there were no consequences. Who else was then to be followed? So that's why we have come in and tried to reinforce the strength of the committee to say that in this particular case, no stone remains unturned, and we want all those turned stones, we want to look under them and tell the public what we see. Sometimes they turn the stones, they look under, they don't tell you what they have seen. But in this case, we want to tell you what we have seen. And we are determined to see that this thing does not go anywhere, because it will be auctioning a section of this country and a critical infrastructure that has not been thought through. Like the question that was asked, the military uses the
airport.
The airport and what you call
it, the
radar system.
radar.
Yeah. They don't have what happens when it falls in private hands.
And will it be compromised?
Yeah, will it compromise the security of the country? The other question was, given the track record of Adani, even as we were sitting, I think just recently, there was an issue in Switzerland with them, how did they even pass the initial bar of integrity? How are they? So basically, there's total non-compliance with the law, and it's also saving grace because we need to move and block it. Otherwise, we are going to get ourselves in deep trouble, whereby this contract will be sealed in circumstances where the public interest has not been addressed.
Let me ask, Senator, procedurally, has the fact that the Senate or even the National Assembly have commenced a probe into this, does it stop KAA from continuing with conversations with Adani?
No, it does not stop.
So if the probe,
until an order is issued.
so if this probe continues, and we've seen probes in Parliament going on for 6 months, 7 months, and within that time a deal is signed, is there any recourse?
Well, the only recourse would be that maybe you tell them that now that you have signed this thing, you carry the airport to India and operate it from India. not from where it is. Yeah. There's that option where the people themselves now will come up and say, okay, we shall take up direct democracy and what watasalamiwa.
Can Parliament stop this deal?
Yeah.
Yes, Parliament can stop it. It has the power to stop it as an oversight organ because the airport was built using taxpayers' money.
This is true.
And the Parliament is a custodian of the public interest. Parliament has the capacity to stop it where it is. After it is contracted, Parliament lacks the tools to stop it. If it is a contract, not only the courts can do it.
Well, if we see the establishment of subsidiary, also we know that there's a fee, nominal or otherwise, that has already been paid. What happens in that instance now?
Now, that's what I'm saying, that it may be the best thing that will happen with Parliament is to be able to bring out the documentation, and then with that documentation, you can have an audit through the courts. And that's when we'll get, there's the courts which have got the orders to quash those contracts if they are not anchored on the law.
Okay.
And I think from what is coming out, I don't see why any competent court would allow this thing to go through.
Senator, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's see how this one plays out. When the next person comes in, we'll invite you again and again so we can get to understand what's being unearthed in these probes. Senator from Busia County, Okiya Omtatah, has been our guest. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. Do have yourselves a lovely day. We'll be back tomorrow morning. It's now 10 a.m.
Spice up your life.